Wander Wealthy Podcast, episode 117. What's up, my loves? Welcome back to the Wander Wealthy Podcast. For those of you who are new, my name is Tess Wicks. I'm the host of this show, and Wander Wealthy is dedicated to helping online coaches and service-based entrepreneurs make and manage their money with ease. We talk about money mindset, and we talk about the practical stuff, and I feel like maybe we're due for some practicality a bit. So today I'm going to be doing a solo show, and I'm going to be sharing some tips and ideas and just kind of stories and learning lessons around setting financial boundaries, especially in your business. So if you've ever had to deal with clients not paying their invoices or get confused or frustrated around the books or, managing or budgeting your life, then this is going to be a wonderful episode for you. We're going to kind of tackle this subject in a couple different categories. I'm going to start with very businessy terms and ideas. We're going to talk about putting terms in your legal documents and contracts and setting those expectations up front. We're going to talk about pricing and how you can set boundaries in your pricing of your services. We're going to talk about systems and the systems you implement inside of your business, especially the financial systems, and how that can trickle down to your personal finances, and the idea of budgeting and saving and setting boundaries in your personal life that will ultimately help your personal finances and your personal life and trickle back up to your business and the lives that you're impacting in the work that you're doing. So I'm really excited. This is a very, very important topic for me, especially as a wealth and mindset coach, because I find that a lot of my clients just don't have well-defined boundaries. And a couple weeks ago, I had told you guys that I am getting certified in NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, hypnosis, EFT, and life and success coaching. And you guys, I am just flooded with so many good vibes. Like, it's been such a riot and so fun and so awesome to be exposed to this material and these learnings, but it's also so informative in terms of the way that our brain works and our subconscious mind, and just understanding why we do the things we do when it comes to our money, especially. Like, I've been able to take my learnings of mindset in general and really tie it to the money piece, and man, some good stuff has come out of it, and I'm really excited to be using it more in my coaching and providing some new services in the future. With that said, I think the first thing, just to tie a bow on this before we unwrap the present, is the idea that your subconscious mind, and if you don't want to think about like conscious mind, just think about your brain and the idea that, you're setting goals, you're trying to do things, you're trying to get shit done, and your brain is wired to help you do those things, but your brain needs specificity. It needs to know what those numbers are. So from the forefront, whether you're setting prices or you're trying to make a certain level of income or you're trying to pay yourself, you need to know what those numbers are. And the best way to do that is to sit down and work with a coach or download my handy dandy easy profit roadmap to help you identify your easy profit math and get a really good idea of your purpose-driven revenue goals. From purpose-driven revenue goals, you're able to do so many things. You can then narrow down what percentage of your revenue you're going to be setting aside in terms of income, so you can identify a salary you want to take. You can also figure out what your prices are going to be, because now you know what revenue goals you want to hit. So how do you then take your services, price them appropriately, and then aim for the numbers that you need in order to get those revenue goals? So it's so much you can do with this. You can go to wonderwealthy.com/roadmap to download it. It'll also introduce you to the entire roadmap that I use to work with my clients one-on-one. And if you're interested in that, you can hit me up on Instagram, send me a DM, or you can send me an email, tess@wanderwealthy.com. Speaking of Instagram though, if you guys are listening to this episode and you're loving every minute of it, or you're getting some really good takeaways, go ahead and take a screenshot, share it on Instagram, tag me at Tess_Wicks. I will definitely shout you out if you tag me. So I would love to see that, and let me know what you loved about this episode. Okay, so we talked about the specificity, the setting very specific numbers, especially if it's a number and especially if it's money related, because your brain wants something specific to go after. So when you shut your eyes at night or you're just like kind of hemming and hawing, I don't know if that's the right phrase, but you're going throughout your day and doing your work, like just the stuff that you got to do to check the boxes, your subconscious mind is going to work at finding out how it's going to get you that money, that dollar amount that you are setting out to get. Or, when you feel like you're ready to say your prices or raise your prices and you have an understanding of why your prices need to be there because you've done these exercises, it's going to be so much more natural and authentic for you to come to the call or send the email that says, hey, this is what I charge. And I could, if you really asked, which nobody ever does, but if they ask and they're like, what the heck? Why are you charging this? You could say, well, let me show you why I'm charging all of this. Now, I'm not going to go into pricing even further because I feel like it's a whole nother bag of marbles that we can sort through in another podcast, but specificity and then being comfortable with those numbers, those specific numbers that you're going after is going to help you when it comes to having those sales conversations or when it comes to just saying your prices and feeling good about those prices. Let's get into more of the kind of sections that I had said I wanted to cover today. So the first thing, and this is something that I do every single bit of this, and it's really important for my business because first of all, it makes managing my finances, especially in the business, super easy. And I don't have to worry about all the BS that goes into getting paid. And that is super important. So terms in your contracts. And if you haven't invested in working with an attorney and setting up a contract, this is so important, you guys. And not only because you want to make sure you're legally protected, but for the peace of mind that it brings you, knowing I got this professional ass contract put together and it has all the terms written out so that I can set these boundaries with my clients. So especially if you are working with clients and you can identify and define those terms that you need in order to feel like your boundaries are being set and respected, you need to do that. And you need to, whether you're finding a contract and you're creating it yourself or you're meeting with an attorney to make sure that it is signed, sealed, and delivered, just make sure you get a contract together. And at the very least, just have some sort of contract so you can have an agreement with who you're doing business with. But in terms of terms in my contract, some things that I make sure to include are first and foremost, the fact that I am going to auto charge. If someone is going to pay on a monthly basis, I'm going to get their credit card information, whether it's manual, which is kind of the way I've been doing things, basically because I haven't invested the money to set up an automated system. I have automation for my online courses. It's all automated through Kajabi, and Kajabi connects to Stripe, and so it can be automated that way. But when it comes to my one-on-one private clients, I just manually take their card information and save it as a customer in Stripe. And then I will go in and charge. And for them, it's an automatic charge because it's coming out the same day of every month. But for me, it is a little bit more manual, but I have just little reminders that are set up for me to do it. And if I forget to do it, I know I'm going to do it on one of my payday parties or money dates. So it's really important for me though to make sure I am telling my clients if they are going to do a payment plan that it is going to be automatically charged. And I outline very specifically detailed information about the date that the first payment is going to be taken out and then how I'm going to charge them from there on out. So for me, it's monthly and it's like, okay, I'm going to charge you on July or August 19th, and then you can expect to pay every 19th from there on out. And it may be plus or minus a couple of days depending on if it falls on a business day or not. So I rarely send invoices. Sometimes I'll send invoices, especially if I need to collect a deposit off the cuff. But one of my approaches is also to make sure I gather a deposit at the forefront when I'm doing a sales call. And this is another piece that I have is like, if you're putting an application out there, which I think applications are really good ways to identify whether the people that you're going to be working with are the right fit for you or not. And don't feel bad about telling them no. Just say, hey, I don't think we're the right fit, but here's someone that I could recommend you to. Hopefully you have, someone in mind, or you can do a little research and connect with them, or you just, tell them straight up, like, I don't think this is the right fit for you. Definitely never take someone who you don't feel is going to be a good fit for you, because you're going to resent that. Even if you're getting a ton of money, you will probably resent that in terms of energy drainage. But we can talk about that in another call as well. But on your application, I think it's really important to include kind of I don't want to call it a weed out question, because that doesn't feel appropriate, but asking a question in regards to, are you ready to make a deposit to work with a coach today? If we're going to get on the phone and talk, is this something that you're taking so seriously, you'd be willing to put a deposit down of whatever the amount is? My deposit has historically been fairly low, but I am considering with, potentially raising it a little bit. I do apply the deposit to their payment plan. So usually, and this is another thing that I think works really well, here's a little money tip for you, is if you are doing a payment plan, apply the deposit to their final and last payment. Don't apply it to the first payment, apply it to the last payment. Because that way, if they choose to just up and leave, which you can also include a cancellation policy, so don't worry about that. But if you aren't doing a cancellation policy, or you can't find it in your heart of hearts to charge them for that, at least you have the deposit, because, and we can talk about like rationalizing why you should keep the deposit, because you should, but you have that deposit, which would be then charged to their final payment, instead of like they pay the deposit, they get on one phone call with you, and then they decide not to ever chat with you again, which you don't even want to go down that rabbit hole of thinking about that happening, because we don't want to attract that kind of energy. But I think it is really good in terms of making sure your bases are checked. No, I'm so bad at metaphors, you guys. Can you tell? But making sure that you are dotting your I's and crossing your T's in terms of money, and respecting and setting those boundaries in place. So, like I said, you can also implement a cancellation policy. And that way, if they choose to make a deposit and work with you for a couple months, you also have this cancellation policy in terms of whether they're going to cancel or try to reschedule a call, or they're just trying to cancel the work with you altogether. And this is something you can, again, include into your terms of the contract. So for me, and I'm just being an open book here, I don't have a cancellation policy in terms of I'm going to charge you for all the months that you haven't paid yet. But I do have a cancellation policy in terms of your deposit is non-refundable. It's just charged to your final payment. But if you don't fulfill your payment terms, then, you just can't get it back, and you're out that $100, $200, $500, however much my deposit ends up being. Now, I also have cancellation and reschedule policies in terms of the calls. And I think especially as online coaches, we're trying to coordinate with our clients, and we're trying to identify schedules and make sure that that works. And sometimes, depending on your client base, they might have to reschedule a call or cancel a call. And I think it's really important as a coach to put those boundaries in place that say, if you want to reschedule a call or you want to cancel a call, you have to do it within 3 days or 2 business days or within 24 hours. And that is to respect their time as well as your time. And then all I ask of you, if you're going to take, this advice and put it in your contract, is respect it back. Respect back to them. So I make sure never to cancel or reschedule on a client within 2 days, because that is the promise that I am expecting them to come and provide me. And so I am going to return that favor as well. So I always try to give 2 days notice if I do have to reschedule a call, or I try not to reschedule a call ever, because that is super important. But we know things come up. So at the very latest, I respect my cancellation/rescheduling policy. And then there's the fact that if they don't respect that, if they don't abide by that, because it's a term in your contract, you can choose to charge them for that month and they don't get it back, or you can choose to charge them for that call and they don't get it back, or you can choose to charge them 50% or something. Having these financial boundaries in place are super important, because you have to think about it as the fact that if they're choosing to cancel, whether it's to cancel the full package or to cancel that call, you could have had another client be in their place. And what they're really paying for not only is the value that you're providing in the transformation for that coaching, not only is it the tools that you're providing them or the accountability that you're providing them or your time, but you're also providing them the benefit of them being able to reserve you, whether it's 1 hour out of every month or it's 1 hour out of every week, and they need to respect that. So you can put a cancellation policy in place however you want. I say I'm fairly flexible and I'm willing to reschedule with 2 business days notice, but some people just say you use it or you lose it. And that's also a great guideline and a great boundary to have in place to respect your own schedule. Those are all of the pieces of the contract that I make sure to have in terms of setting financial boundaries within my contract. The other point that I had that I didn't dedicate full on was just the fact that I do take a deposit. And I think it is really important to take a deposit because you get that upfront commitment. And then you can also guarantee, especially if they're doing a payment plan, that they're going to follow through, or at least further guarantee a bit that they're going to follow through with that commitment of working with you for the 3-month or the 6-month time frame, or however long you do work with your clients or your customers. That wraps up terms of contract. I'm sure there's many more ideas. And if you do have more ideas of how you set financial boundaries, especially inside of the contracts and inside of payment methods and processes and whatnot with your clients, I would love to hear from you. Reach out to me on Instagram, Tess_Wicks. I just want to know all the good details and tips so I can go forward and share those. The next piece is setting financial boundaries and respecting your time and your money in terms of pricing. So this is really another good conversation to have. I had a wonderful conversation in regards to this with someone who's going to be on the show in about a month. Her name is Taylor Liu, and she is a fellow coach. And we talked about pricing a bit, about the importance of charging more for your services and the fact that you need to charge a lot so that you can attract the right people. And maybe you don't want to attract people that are going to pay you a lot. Maybe you want to attract a certain type of customer or client. But the fact is, and it's kind of weird when you say it and you hear it for the first time, but charging more is doing your potential client or customer a service because they have more skin in the game. They're willing to respect you more because a lot of people have this idea of loss aversion. They don't want to lose money. And the idea of paying you and following through on the work that you're going to be doing together means that they are getting the most bang for their buck because they're investing in you and they want to do that work and see that transformation. So they're going to show up not only for you as the coach, but also for themselves. This is a big conversation I have to have with clients every once in a while. And it's the idea of getting on their own team. I really want them to be on their own team, to show up for themselves, to respect their time and their money. And why that is so important is because, it's not for me, whether they do the homework or whether they show up to the call on time. It's for them because it's the money that they chose to invest. And I often find that the clients that pay me more end up respecting their own time and their own money a lot more. And they show up, they do the work, and they get the much more significant and better transformation. So they're getting way more bang for their buck, even though they're paying more because they're much more committed. So pricing for them is really important, and it's a really good headspace to be in when you are setting your prices. Make sure you're not making it too good to be true, because then they're potentially, not every client is going to do this, but they might take advantage of that because it probably is too good to be true. The other thing is it's really important to set a price that feels good for you. And it's because you will find that the clients that don't pay as much, you might come to resent in a way. And that's not a blanket statement. There's a lot of clients that have paid me less and I have loved to work with them and everything. And it's not about the money, but it goes back to my first point, which is the clients who tend to pay a little bit more also show up in a way different mindset and attitude, and with the idea that they're going to do the work, and they take their time and their money very seriously and take responsibility, and they're on their own team. So they're much more likely to get the results. And the clients who may not be paying you what you have deemed a fair wage, especially if you're kind of early on and you you started out with some lower rates and then you've slowly been increasing your rates, that's where you'll start to see like the split of what you determine is a fair rate for you to be paid and how the clients who are paying you the fair rate are showing up in a better headspace and with a better attitude than the clients who aren't. And so it kind of lends to just this resentment of, I'm showing up, I really want this for them, they're paying me less, and they're not doing as much of the work, or they're not able to show up in that same energy and that same way as what I'm really expecting, because I have these other clients who do pay me more and do show up with this. So you want to make sure that you're pricing so that it's fair for your clients, especially in terms of it's doing good for them to pay you this fair price that might stretch them a little bit, but also forces them to show up in a way, but also so you don't have that big dispersion and you don't have any resentment towards the clients who aren't paying you as much and probably, and this isn't all the time, but may not be showing up in the same way as well. The last thing in terms of pricing, and this is a big one, and this alludes back to what I had began this whole podcast with, was the idea of understanding your pricing in terms of what you need in order to cover your costs. So when I talked about setting your purpose-driven revenue goals, the way that I have my clients and those who download the Easy Profit Roadmap, the way I have them do that is they have to identify what their income goals are and what their business costs are, and the fact that they need to set money aside for taxes and for profit. And this is not because I just want you to have a little bit of money on hand in your business. No, this is because that's what it takes to run a business. You can't just not pay taxes. And you could run a business without profit, but then your business is running paycheck to paycheck. And who wants to run a business like that? And if you were ever to try to sell your business or to pitch your business and get investing, which maybe that's never the goal, but you want to think in that headspace as one of those types of business owners, you got to show profit. That's the most important thing. So you need to ensure that your income in your business is able to cover these four major components of running a business, which are paying you a salary if you are working full-time in your business, or paying you a profit distribution if you're just like an investor and kind of someone who runs the business but doesn't work in the business, paying employees if you end up having those, which go into business costs, but also paying all those other business costs like online platforms, usually subscriptions that we have to our email marketing software and our course hosting software, and maybe, I have a podcast audio hosting software, all of those costs that are involved in running a business. Plus, you want to make sure that you're setting aside money for taxes, because guess what? That's not your money in the first place. And you want to have some profit. Every business needs profit. You got to have it. So you got to include all of that. So if you download the Easy Profit Roadmap, you'll do the Easy Profit math and you'll figure out how to set purpose-driven revenue goals using these four big pieces of what it takes to run a business. And then you'll define what you need in terms of business income, in terms of revenue. And then you can break that down into your pricing. And that's why it's really important for you to set hard and fast boundaries when it comes to your pricing and not let yourself sway, because when you are saying your pricing on a sales call, you're giving your rates, now well, this is what it takes for me to continue to live my life, even if it's bare bones, and for me to continue to run this business. This is what I have to charge. And that is how you can then present your prices with these basically you've built this building, this house with financial boundaries, because you had boundaries in terms of the business costs, what you need to make, and your personal finances, taxes, and profit. You created this revenue model. Then you set boundaries in terms of your time and how many clients you're willing to take on and how often you're willing to meet with your clients, and also all the value add that you provide to your clients. And then you're setting those prices, and your prices have to have boundaries too. Now, before we get into the third section that I had introduced in terms of how to set financial boundaries, which is systems, I want to take a second to address those who are a little bit more spiritually guided and kind of think in terms of an abundance and manifestation. So if you are one of those and you're much less like, I need the tactical, practical boundaries type of thing, Boundaries, that word probably doesn't feel abundant to you. You know, the idea of, and this gets into personal finances, setting a budget. A lot of my clients feel restricted when they have to set themselves a budget because then their budget is defining what you can and cannot spend. And I am like always kind of torn in this regard, but I think if you ask any manifestation coach and any person who works on abundance and bringing more abundance to people's lives, they will tell you how important it is to have boundaries. It's the idea that boundaries and having boundaries in your life is freedom. And it doesn't feel like it because it's like, well, why would I like restrict myself or put up walls? Because, you know, you can think of boundaries as walls. Why would I put those up in my life? That doesn't feel free. But you can think about like relationship boundaries and how if someone isn't respecting your own relationship boundaries, or if you aren't respecting someone else's relationship boundaries, that's actually the opposite of freedom. That does not feel good for most people because some people are disrespecting their boundaries and they're not communicating their boundaries to these people. But you can also disrespect your boundaries in terms of how much time you should really be spending with certain types of people. You know, I have some family members that I know I have to limit my time because I can pick up on some of their energy that doesn't always serve me. Or drinking, for instance. That's a good boundary to have because you don't want to be overly intoxicated all the time because it doesn't make you feel good the next day and maybe you make a fool of yourself. The same goes for financial boundaries. Although it feels restrictive to have a set amount of money to spend, what you're also allowing yourself to do is you're respecting your boundaries and you're respecting your priorities in life, because it's true that there is too much of a good thing sometimes. And so if we just spend our money, then we're not always able to see the opportunities that are on the other side of spending, which tend to be saving and investing. And so it's really important to have boundaries because boundaries do equal freedom. I don't like to set super strict boundaries, especially when it comes to budgeting, for instance. I like to have an idea of what my boundary is and then always keep a decent eye on it, like daily or if not weekly, to make sure that I'm not going outside and disrespecting that boundary. So as an example, I like to have at least $2,000 minimum in my checking account. And this is my personal checking account, which for some people, that's way beyond their boundaries. They're fine with $300 in their checking account. But for me, $2,000. I have a mortgage. I have some pretty big expenses in terms of running and operating a rental property and a home. And although a lot of those things are now paid out in my business account, my mortgage is still getting paid out in my personal checking account. And I need to track that. And that's a whole nother story. But for me, having the boundary of, okay, you can spend as much as you want, however much comes into my personal checking account, I can kind of spend as much as I want, but I also need to make sure that I am automatically saving money into other savings accounts or investment accounts. And I'm able to cover some of these big costs that come in. So then when I pay off my credit card or I look at my credit card balance compared to my checking account and it's going to cross over that boundary that I have, that's when I know, okay, it's time to really get diligent about my finances and make sure I'm getting back to that amount. But that's what the point is just to know what your boundaries are and keep an eye on it. And so you know, okay, if I go over that or if I go under that, I know how to course correct and I know how to adapt. And that's really important in terms of overall freedom. And if you really want to have abundance in your life, you need to know what is appropriate, how to respect your financial boundaries, and how to attract abundance into other areas of your life as well. The other thing to say in terms of abundance and manifestation and the idea that boundaries feel rigid is the idea that, and I may have alluded to this, your subconscious mind loves specificity. Yes, I did mention this at the beginning. And so it feels rigid to say, I want to make $31,000 per month in my business. That is my business income goal. Because what if you could make 40,000 or what if you could make 50,000? But your subconscious mind needs specificity. And if you're not at that 31,000, put that in its head, because you don't want to just say, I want to make more money. When you say, I want to make more money, your subconscious mind takes that literally and it goes out. And if you walk by a penny on the ground, it's going to go, oh, here's more money for you. So it doesn't understand the difference between 1 penny and $31,000 in terms of more money. So you need to be specific. So just set and understand, what is that big overarching, and here we go again, a purpose-driven revenue goal. You can slice it into months, or you can say it on an annual basis. Then you can tell your subconscious mind what that is specifically, and you can go after it. And guess what? You can potentially make more, or once you hit that number and you're like, hey, I'm ready for more, figure out what that new number is and start telling yourself that. Okay, so specificity, having boundaries, and knowing that that can still manifest abundance and attract more into your life, even though it feels like, oh, boundaries feel rigid and strict. They aren't. They are the true secret to having freedom in your life. Okay. The last 2 sections, and I'm going to try to make this quick because I know we're going a little long. The first thing is having boundaries when it comes to your business systems. So there's a lot of different things in here, and I had already kind of alluded to them when I went through. I keep getting ahead of myself, basically. But the first thing to make sure you have boundaries around is the idea of having an emergency savings fund for your business. Now, a future episode, I'm going to talk about how to manage inconsistent income. And this is a really good hack to have, and you can get started just having an emergency savings fund in your business now, and then we can talk about how to use it for inconsistent income in the future. But setting up a separate account, and this can even be part of your profit account at first if you are implementing Profit First, or if you implement my Easy Profit system. But setting up an account to set money aside as a percentage of your overall revenue every single time you get paid, or when you do your payday parties, which are what I like to do. More on that in a little bit. So set up that account, transfer the money from your revenue income to this account, and let it grow. With every paycheck that comes in, move that money to this account. Having a boundary for what feels good and secure for you in terms of emergency savings fund is going to allow you way more freedom. And here is why. It's going to allow you to take bigger risks, meaning making a risky decision for your business and sticking your neck out there to try a new thing, or to hire a new client, or to invest in a coach or a course or a certification process and see if it's going to work out for you. It'll also serve as a way to, again, regulate your income. And we're going to talk about that in a future episode. It's also there in case shit hits the fan, something totally breaks down, or you have an admin assistant and they leave you and you have to hire someone really quickly off the cuff, and either they don't work out or maybe they charge a little bit more because it's so last minute, but you just need it. There's so many reasons why having a little extra money on the side is so helpful for you and will allow you to make these decisions without freaking out and figuring out, okay, how am I going to change my entire business model, or increase all my prices with my clients, or cut all these costs for this 1 month or 3 month hiccup that I'm going through. So setting up an emergency savings fund and having that for your business is a super important boundary to have. The next boundary is, of course, committing to saving for taxes. This is a very similar reason to having an emergency savings fund, except for the fact that there's no unpredictable emergency you're trying to pay for. You're just trying to pay your taxes. And if you can set aside a percentage of every invoice that gets paid in your business, or again, if you do your payday parties, you can set aside your total revenue, a percentage of it into your taxes account, that will allow you to, at the very minimum, have a buffer to cover most of your taxes, if not way more than enough. And then guess what? If you do end up saving way more than enough, you get to turn that money around. You can put it in your emergency savings fund. You can take it out of your business account as a profit distribution, or you can choose to reinvest it into the business for whatever you dang well please. But again, having a boundary. So in this case, it's having a set percentage that you're going to set aside from income into an account, and actually fulfilling that and committing to that is, again, going to allow you to have so much more freedom when it comes to your business and feel like, okay, business is really easy. It's not as hard as people are making it out to be. The next thing is to pay yourself. This is another boundary that I think a lot of people disrespect. A lot of business owners never take a paycheck from their business, and I find it so fascinating, not in a good way. I think that you're building a business because you're trying to, build this impact and transform lives, but you're also building something that is supposed to keep you alive and fund your life and whatever lifestyle you want to create. I mean, heck, you're taking a huge risk and you're putting a lot of time and effort into something. It might as well pay you. But so many people don't feel like their business is in a place to pay them. And I beg to differ. This is something that I help my clients do in private coaching. I also help them understand how they can get started with my payday parties. So if you guys have been around for a while, you've probably heard of my guilt-free spending system. I am rebranding this into what I like to call payday parties. And it's a full workshop to take you through how to understand how to set your income goals and define those purpose-driven revenue goals a little bit more. Also integrating a lot of the mindset work that is involved in getting over your income blocks. So what you feel like you deserve versus what you actually want, and how to stop self-sabotaging yourself. And through the workshop, you'll also see how paying yourself is totally possible and how you should be doing it, and doing it on a consistent and regular basis, because that is the boundary that you set. And heck, you didn't build this business so you could never take a paycheck. Let's take a paycheck before you really feel ready, because you probably are ready. You just haven't realized it yet. The last boundary in terms of systems and working within your business is, of course, respecting your business's budget. When you disrespect your business budget, you're overspending in terms of what you can really afford. And when you do that, you're setting your business into a downward spiral. You're either taking on debt, which is obviously hard to get out of once you get in that hole, or you're using money that should be saved and is meant to be saved for other things. Maybe it's your taxes money, which really is not yours, and so you're going to be indebted to the government. Or maybe it's your profit money, which really needs to be there for emergencies, not for, whatever this random thing that you're choosing to disrespect your business budget on. Or maybe you're not paying yourself. And again, you should not be a slave to your business. Your business should be in service to you. And so by taking from your paycheck to pay for whatever old thing you want to use for your business, that is not respecting your boundaries and obviously not respecting your business's budget. So having a business budget is really important as well. And again, this is something I help my private one-on-one clients with. Lastly is your personal finances. So obviously having boundaries financially in your personal finances is really important. There's a lot of different ways that this comes into play. Obviously, budgeting, and we've kind of alluded to this already, is really important to have in place, whether you're going to budget down to the dollar and do zero-based budgeting, which is where you give every dollar a job and a purpose, or you're going to do the anti-budget, which is my signature budget. I help people understand how to do this again in my payday parties. So join the waitlist if you want to get in. Right now, it's still probably the guilt-free spending system workshop, but I'm going to be transitioning this when I have the time to my payday parties. So regardless, you can sign up for the wait list, and we're probably going to host the next payday party at the end of August, early September. So be on the lookout for that. And in order to get on the wait list, you can go to wanderwealthy.com/GFSS, or you can download the Easy Profit Roadmap, and then that will guide you to the payday parties. But in the payday parties, you determine a guilt-free spending number, something that has evolved from my anti-budget, but it's just a daily spending number that you get to spend guilt-free. And so there's certain boundaries set up around fixed spending and some savings that you're committing to, and then you get this ultimate number that you get to spend, and it's a budget, but it doesn't really feel like a budget. It actually feels more like a game. Another form of budgeting I had already mentioned is just having that boundary in terms of what you're comfortable with for your checking account or some savings accounts, knowing what that number is and not being willing to go below it. Now, there is an important piece here, which is the idea of getting comfortable having money and increasing your savings or even spending set point. That's a money mindset thing that you might need to work on. If your set point, if that number is really pretty low and feels a little too low, but you haven't been able to save or even just hold on to more money than that. So let's say your boundary is $300. We also call that a set point. And if you allow yourself to have $300 in your checking account and it kind of always hovers around that, Basically, you're finding ways to spend that money. But then when it goes below 300, that's when the alarm bells go off. We want to try to raise that to like $1,000 and then ultimately $2,000 or whatever feels the best for you, but doesn't go against your ability to manifest and bring in abundance and more money, and continue to see that you can raise that set point if you want to. So that's a whole nother topic to talk about, is wealth, income, savings, spending set points. But that is something to note, is you can set a boundary in terms of budgeting with your bank account, but you want to be careful not to have that be too low. You want to know what is a good, solid number to be at. The last thing in terms of setting really good financial boundaries in your personal life, and this is a big one, is who you're willing to lend money to. And I would actually argue, if you are approached to lend money to friends or family, never do it. Instead, if you want to give friends or family money, see it as giving, as a gift, and never expect the money to come back. The reason is because when you lend friends and family money and then you have this kind of timeline that you're expecting them to pay it back, or you're wanting them to pay it back, that timeline and that act of here's money, here's financial stuff, anything money related, finance related, and then they're expecting to pay it back, that can really hurt a relationship. And so in order to preserve a relationship, you should have financial boundaries in place. And those financial boundaries should look a lot like, I'm not willing to lend you money, but I am willing to give you money. And so here's the amount I'm willing to give you as a gift from my own generosity. And changing the way that you look at that is going to totally change your relationships, and especially if there's any strain on your relationships. Just deciding, especially if you have like money outstanding right now, just deciding, you know what, that's a gift. It is theirs. You can even tell them, you know what, I don't want you to pay this back. This is a gift that I have now decided I am gifting you, and I do not expect you to pay this back because, and you don't have to explain this part to them, but perhaps it's been straining your relationship, or it's been stressing you out, or it's been making you perceive them as someone that you don't want to have to perceive them as. And that often comes into play when money gets involved in relationships. So instead of loaning anyone money, just see it as giving. Decide how much are you willing to give and not expect in return. And that's going to be your financial boundaries in terms of being able to preserve relationships. All right, you guys. This was longer than I expected, but I had a lot to say, and I think it is so important to understand what your financial boundaries are in all these different categories and all these different little steps of life. So if you have questions for me, I would love it if you would share this episode on Instagram, and then you can reach out to me in the DMs. My handle is Tess_Wicks. You can always shoot me an email, tess@wonderwealthy.com. Right now, I have a couple of spots open to work with some business owner clients one-on-one through a 6-month coaching program. If you're ready for this, I would love to have a chat with you. You can go to wonderwealthy.com/apply to fill out the application and sign up for a discovery call. We can chat about what coaching would look like and if you would be the right fit. I promise I will be totally and completely honest. That is super important to me. That is one of my not only financial boundaries, but business boundaries. And if you're wondering just how to identify some of these numbers, get some specificity in your numbers, and start setting some boundaries in terms of pricing and terms in your contracts, then you're going to want to know what your purpose-driven revenue number is. And you can do that by doing the easy profit math in my easy profit roadmap. So go to wonderwealthy.com/roadmap to get in. And then, like I said, you'll be the first to know if you sign up for the waitlist that is all linked within the easy profit roadmap. You'll be the first to know when my next payday party is. So get yourself the roadmap and start doing a little bit of calculation. Pour yourself a nice beverage, turn on some good tunes, and just go hard in the paint when it comes to the numbers. I promise it's easy. I actually also provide a video walkthrough in case you are freaked out with the numbers. I'm here to help you out, girlfriend. Okay, that is it today. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know. And until next time, I hope you wander wealthy.